Today, I want to tell you about the 3 most traumatic experiences that I have ever had as a trader. Quite frankly, this could be a 3-hour-long video with 250 traumatic experiences on the low end. The reality is that trading is one of the most traumatic careers out there, as you will go through crazy emotional volatile swings trying to handle the stresses that come with making money and losing money in the markets. Now, of these 3 traumatic experiences, I was fascinated by the fact that when I was trying to pick the 3 to talk about, I found 3 that all came from very different eras of my trading career. The first of these 3 traumatic experiences actually came within the first 2 months of me starting to trade. I had recently discovered what options were, and I was fascinated by the potential to make hundreds of percents return. I remember I was at home over Thanksgiving break from college, and I took an overnight trade on Cisco, a company that my dad actually worked for 10, 15, 20 years. And on that trade, I made over 100% return. And I was absolutely stunned by what the ability and the powers that options had to give me these crazy high returns. I remember I actually went downstairs from my room while my dad was cooking breakfast that day and talking to him about how, I don't think I'm going to use my agriculture degree anymore. I think I'm going to be a full-time options trader.
I like you, man. You lie a lot.
Remember, this was about a month or 2 after having starting trading. So my dad kind of looked at me and laughed and goes, yeah, okay, let's talk again in a week or 2 and see if you're still having this kind of success. And then again in the next few months and see if this is more than just a fun little side hobby for you. And I looked at him dead in the eye and I go, yeah, watch. And I was so confident that I walked back upstairs, frustrated that he had doubted me and my abilities, that the next day I was ready to completely prove him wrong. I ended up holding my position from Wednesday into Friday, with Thursday being a holiday that week, fully unaware of how options worked entirely. And I watched that entire position go to zero. I was unaware that options expired and that if they expired out of the money, I would lose the entire position. And the worst part was that I had to walk downstairs that Friday, making my leftover Thanksgiving lunch, and I had to look him straight in the eye and go, yeah, every single dollar that I made on Wednesday before is gone. And it is completely effed at zero. I was stunned. I was shocked. And I remember looking at him in the face and seeing his reaction, not saying I told you so, but ha, I told you so. For me, I would say that was my first traumatic experience with trading. Prior to that, I had lost money, and prior to that, I had had losing trades. But I didn't really know what it was like to blow an account until I put all of my money into one options trade and watched that entire position go to zero. Now, I know that's happened to many of you, and it usually happens very on in someone's career once they start trading options. Now, what's fascinating is when I was thinking of the 3 traumatic experiences, that happened to me in 2017. And the next most traumatic experience that I want to refer to actually took place in 2023 in November. So this is a huge time jump for me. This is 6 years of trading experience later, and I'm still having traumatic experiences. For me, during November 2023, I actually recorded myself and filmed every single trade that I took live and made it an entire YouTube series with the help of my amazing creative director, Mr. Connor Callan, and we produced what we believe to be the best trading series on YouTube ever. Now, if you watched that series, you are well aware of what happened in episode 2, where I got cocky and just blew my entire account and lost everything. Now, for me, I was starting with $5,000, an extremely small amount that I hadn't traded with in years, quite frankly. But I remember watching this back and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to explain to the world how I just blew an account while being filmed, while being recorded, and fully conscious of it. It was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life because I exuded all of the typical signs that you would see in a classic tilt. I had a couple of big winning days in a row where I definitely was over leveraging. And on a trade that was in profit for me, I refused to admit that I was wrong and watched that profitable trade go from profitable to completely zero. I had taken $5,000 and turned it into $18,000 using a high quality strategy that I could show as a positive example to other traders. And in that moment, something happened where I froze and wasn't able to accept that I was wrong. And on camera, in front of the world, blew an account that I had taken from $5,000 to $18,000. This was one of the most humbling experiences in the world for me because I literally had to tell the world, hey, go watch me not just take losses, not just ignore my stop loss, but outright blow an account. It was something that I dealt with extreme backlash from the trading community. Traders yelling that I didn't know how to manage risk, that I wasn't a real trader, I was a gambler. Honestly, it was one of the most mentally exhausting things that I have gone through from an outside perspective. Not only was I extremely harsh on myself for the mistakes that I had made, but again, it was something that was public and out there for the entire world to see. When something like that happens, it takes a toll on your confidence because it starts to make you question, do I really have the skills that I thought that I had? Those few days, I cannot express to you how much I struggled. I remember staying in my room and just sitting there, chain smoking joints in pain because it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. So traumatic experience number one, I feel like is something that a whole lot of traders go through. Traumatic experience number two was a little bit unique to me, but ended up serving as an amazing example for all traders of how to avoid the classic mistakes that I made during my second most traumatic experience. Now, I want to make it clear, in between those 6 years, I had plenty of traumatic experiences. Plenty of times where I averaged down on positions I shouldn't have. Plenty of times where I took trades that I shouldn't have, refused to admit that I was wrong. You name it, I did it. But when I was thinking of the three most traumatic experiences of my life, those are the first two that popped into my head. Well, not really. There's another trading experience to me that happened in February, and it's something that I haven't really publicly talked about a whole lot. During the week of February, I had one of my best trading weeks ever. In fact, it was my best trading week ever. I had made over $400,000 in a single week. I call it a series of fortunate events. So while I definitely used my skill to generate those profits along the way, I would be lying if I said there wasn't a few lucky breaks that helped me capture that ginormous return. However, the next week, something happened that ended up being, in my opinion, one of the most traumatic trading experiences I've ever had. I took a position overnight and I thought I was going to wake up in solid profit and expected a little bit more of a run up at market open the next day. Now, 1 minute before the market opened, this swing trade actually spiked dramatically in my favor. And as soon as the market opened, I was up significantly more than what I thought I was going to be up. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I was up 6 figures. And that's something that I had absolutely zero plans. I didn't think the risk that I took on that trade would allow for that kind of return. But that market opened and my contracts were up 400%. And I've never froze like that in my life. I have never sat at the computer with the inability to press a button like that in my entire life. I was out the night before. This occurred to me while I was trading off my laptop and traveling. So I knew that I wasn't at my best mental state. I struggled to sleep the night before. I was tossing and turning. Once I saw the stock was up pre-market, my attention was on that. I couldn't fall back asleep. It was just something where I knew my mentals weren't in the 100% right spot. And so I had planned to maybe be up 20K, 30K at market open. But before I knew it, I was literally up 6 figures and I froze. I completely froze. And all of a sudden, these thoughts that I hadn't even considered started coming into my brain. I started to think, well, what if it keeps going and I make 250? What if it keeps going and I catch a unicorn 10,000%? All these intrusive thoughts started to come into my head because I was up much more than I initially expected. And then the first 5 minutes of market open occurred. The first 5 minutes of market open occurred, and that 6 figures of profit had drawn down to 70K. 30% of it had been wiped out within that first 5 minutes. 2 minutes later, it was down to under 50K. So all of the sudden, within the first 7 or 8 minutes of the day, I've watched myself be up 6 figures, then suddenly up sub 50K. Then another 5 minutes occur, and it's 30K. Another 5 minutes occur, and it's 20K. And all of the sudden, frozen, unable to touch a button, I have watched myself give back 6 figures of profit. Now, for the rest of the day, it hovered and it bounced, and I was up 5 figures, 10 to 20,000, for a solid few hours. There was actually a point in time where I probably could have gotten out still for a $25,000 profit, an unreal amount of money, but I was frozen, and I couldn't push the button. I literally could not push the button, and I could not bring myself to exit that trade. I was too focused on the fact that what if it gets back to 6 figures? What if? What if? I continued to talk myself into holding it for whatever reason. I said, well, what if this happens? What if the chart does this? What if the chart does that? And the next thing you know, that position is back at break even. And I watched a 6-figure trade trail all the way back down to break even and eventually red about $10,000, which is where I closed it for a loss. At that point in time, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take what was happening. I could not mentally fathom what was going on. And I remember looking at Connor, my videographer, creative director, and down him, just looking in the eye and shaking my head and goes, I gotta tell you what happened today. I gotta come clean because holy crap. I'm not gonna lie to you all. I called my mom and dad. I had a conversation with them about it because it was one of the most traumatic things that not just had happened to me in my trading career, but in my life. To watch yourself be up 6 figures and then knowingly freeze and unable to press that exit button. I mean, the discouragement that I felt in that moment is unlike anything that I ever felt. I've never once thought about quitting trading, but that was the first moment in my life where I was like, am I going to be able to do this for the rest of my life? Because these emotional swings, I can't handle it. And it was something that truly led me to have a couple of weeks where I was just in this mental slump. I didn't even feel like trading anymore. I went and started using $500 position sizes because I just couldn't bring myself to feel inspired to put risk on. For me, that was one of the most traumatic experiences that I've ever had as a trader. And the reason that I wanted to highlight it is that it came 7 years into my trading career. It came at a point where I have already reached all of the goals that I hoped to achieve as a trader. I've surpassed them and more. Yet my most traumatic experience occurred within the last 3 months, within 7 years of me learning how to trade. So the reason I wanted to emphasize that is no matter what you have gone through so far in your trading career, if you hope to continue to pursue this and reach those next levels, beware that the traumas you face will continue to present themselves. Do you have to make the same mistake I did and let 6 figures trail into a red trade? Absolutely not. And I can promise you, I'm never going to let that happen again. That feeling will never consume me the way that it did previously. However, if you aren't ready for the emotional swings that will come with leveling up as a trader, beware, because no matter what stage you reach, you will continue to go through struggles every single year.